Welcome back to Metropole Television. You are watching Business I Am. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiage. Let's talk about what it is that we have for you now. Therefore, now the COVID-19 pandemic has introduced a lot of disruptions in the world's economy, ranging from the understanding of work and relation of work. Now, phenomena like work from home in Kenya were hardly a culture in the country, but now presents themselves as a way forward for most of the big and small businesses going forward. Local corporates have also been forced to rethink their business models as clients become more selective on the services they consider essential or not during the pandemic amidst reduced financial strengths. Now, with the Labour Department already painting a gloomy picture on the number of jobs lost in the country, corporates have now been forced to look back at their employees, retrain them in the wake of the pandemic to drive their vision and goals amidst the pandemic. So, is change management awareness more important than ever within this pandemic? This morning, we are joined by Anthony Washira, a strategic learning partner with a millennial leadership coach for executives, who's going to paint a clear picture on this issue. Anthony, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simba. Thank you for having me.
Anytime, man. Now, somebody's going to ask you, wow, change management. Let's begin with that. What is that?
Thank you, Simba, for that. I want to start by quoting one of the famous gurus, and he wrote this many years ago, almost predicting things like this. And he is Peter Drucker, and he said that change is the norm, and unless an organization sees that as its task, let me take that again. That change is the norm.
Yes.
Unless an organization sees that its task is to lead change, it will not survive. So Peter Drucker was telling us that, and that's many years ago, that change is something that we have got to get used to. Another guy, Leon Meginson, said it is not the strongest of the species that will survive, but the ones that are adaptive. So they were kind of foretelling what would happen, and that change would be a constant.
Yes.
And therefore, according to me, and I know that there are wonderful definitions that have been given about change, I want to borrow from all of them and say that change is actually preempting or looking forward and saying that change will come, accepting that change is part and parcel of today, and then planning for it, and then leading through a series of transitions and doing that successfully. And that leading means that you have to take into consideration the people aspects, you have to take into consideration the process aspects and the technological aspects and other variables. Yes.
Pretty much fantastic. Now that it's clear, but talk to me therefore, Anthony. I mean, well, people saying change management now more than ever is needed. Do you share the same sentiment as the corporate world is wallowing within the COVID-19 pandemic?
I agree. I think so, because a new word, well, it's not new, but the word that has been used, the acronym that has been used a lot lately and has become more prominent during the pandemic is Voca, which stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And when we were saying that earlier, we were talking about millennials in the workplace, we were talking about changing in technology, we were talking about working from home, we were talking about artificial intelligence. Then we were hit by a virus that just, for lack of a better word, I'll use a confusing word, discombobulated us. So we were confused, we were thrown into a spin. And people who did not want to change have. So the pandemic has been what I call a catalyst. It has to accept that change is normal, that change is part and parcel, because we could predict, we knew that we used to say epidemics will come, but we didn't know when, we didn't know where, we didn't know how hard they would hit us, and we didn't know the resultant consequences. We were hit by a pandemic that has caused us to change the way we work. So I believe that it is a catalyst, and it is going to inform a great many decisions going forward, and it is going to bring change to the fore. The people who thought that we could continue doing things the very same old way are badly mistaken. Yes.
Pretty much. Now, it's a good thing that we keep on talking about this change, therefore. Let's paint a clear picture. I mean, when you look at an organization, for example,
Yes.
what would you say are the various levels of change management? And the only thing that somebody is going to ask you this morning, Anthony, is that can they all coexist at once within these different levels?
Thank you very much, Simba, for that. Going by different change models, I choose to look at this to look at a basic to look at the levels in a basic way, as opposed to pick one model and to work with it. And I think that the levels would take this format. There would be a change request or a change demand.
Yes.
Because in the excuse me, in the face of this pandemic, there has not been a request but a demand to change, because you don't change, things are going to go south. So there's a change request or a change demand. Then we get to a second level where we do an analysis, where we analyze the kind of change that we need to make. We do critical thinking. Who will be affected? How are they going to be affected? Is there another way? Is this the best way forward? Then after we have accepted that this is a change that we want to make, then we implement that change. So there's the implementation stage, at which now we actually now have the change process begin. And then we have the evaluation stages, what we would call completion and reinforcement. So loosely put, those can be steps towards a successful implementation of change. Can they work together? I am persuaded that it is better for them to not work in tandem, to work instead. I'm persuaded that they should work in a structure, in a system where one leads to the other, because research shows that 70% of change initiatives don't work. They fail. And they fail because of approaching change in a casual way, approaching change as though it's an easy thing. We are resistant to change. We like change, but we don't like to change. So when you are changing as an organization, you are telling us that we have to change, and we don't like to change. So you have to anticipate that. And because of anticipating that, I recommend that we have it as a structure, as a system, as a process, so that one step leads on to another, and finally we have a different way of doing things, and we say we have changed successfully.
Yes. Now, Anthony, well, I know you have sort of highlighted the steps that go into implementation of that change. Give me an idea now. I mean, we're talking about now within the COVID-19 pandemic, and then, well, we have to change the way in which that we run our organization. Can you talk to somebody? You have, as a manager, this idea that you want to be the thing that the organization is going to run on. Where do you start from, and how do you start implementing it?
Cool. Number one, I would say homework. Let's begin from understanding and accepting that change is difficult. We don't want to change. So from the get-go, we do our homework, and then we present this change in this way, that the current state of doing things is a pain and is unsustainable. So we must know the pain that we are going to heal, and then we must show them that the future desired change is the utopia, is the pleasure that we are going to gain by doing the change. So do your homework, then present it in a pain versus pleasure format. Then answer this question for your people. What's in it for them? If you let them know what's in it for them, they will be more willing to change. They will be more willing to participate, because everybody buys into something that they have helped create.
Yes.
Another thing.
Actually, I'm so sorry to cut you there shortly, but it's not in most instances where there's always something in for the employees or any other department that you want to change.
And I agree. And that's why I'm saying that you need to look for your homework. And
Yes.
Sometimes what's in it for us is if the organization does not survive, then we have no livelihood.
Yes.
So you have to look for, because a change, any benefit, ideally, in an ideal situation, a benefit to the organization, and this is my persuasion, by the way, a benefit to the organization should translate to benefits to the people, because the organization is the people, the processes, the technology. It's a holistic thing. So the benefits of this change should be communicated in a way where they appeal to me, the staff member. If they don't, we have a problem, because remember we said 70% of the change initiatives don't work, and it's because of neglecting to show the people component how it is going to benefit them or what's in it for them. So we have to look for what's in it for them and communicate it in that way, because we are emotional beings. Logic does not make sense. We don't buy logic, we buy emotions. Tell us the good things that will come. And they don't have to be financial, by the way. No. They don't have to be financial. They could be how we affect lives. They could be how we compete. And then there's something I wanted to add before you asked. John Maxwell wrote a book called The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And one of the laws, he called it the law of E.F. Hutton. And he says that when the true leader speaks, the people listen. So you need to look for the influencers, the true leaders in the informal circles of your company. There are people who speak and your people listen. Get their buy-in. Once you have gotten the buy-in of those people, your idea can be easily turned into a movement, because if they have bought in and the people listen to them, you can use them to communicate, to simplify your communication, to help them show your people what's in it for them.
Pretty much.
Yes,
all right. Now, but I ask you this question though, because I think again I should have started from this point. From what you said this morning. Now, let me split this question into two. Well, number one, even these people, I would say the departmental heads, even yourself as a manager who's really trying to push this idea into this organization, you need some sort of training to know exactly how it is you're going to implement this. Anthony, where do you get this sort of training? Where do you start from?
Right up my alley, Simba. I am a transitions coach, and I honestly believe that change changes transitions, and that we sometimes need help from coaches or someone else to help us put things in perspective. Change is turbulent. We don't like change. In fact, Peter Drucker also said this, that in times of turbulence, the greatest danger is not turbulence itself. It's doing things, it's applying yesterday's logic. So we know that we are going to change things. We know we are going to change the way we were doing things. So when we know that, then we know that there's a learning that is supposed to happen. Most organizations, this not, because that is what the be, because we are constantly learning new things. If we are constantly, and it is easy for us to say we are now preparing for a change. So because we are always learning, as we learn, we're going to incorporate such invite a coach, a change coach or transition takers, or to help as we make this transition. But I go back to the culture. We need to have a culture of learning that will make the people ready to receive something new, and even possibly readier to make than people who have not been learning.
Pretty much. Now, let me just go to the second part of that question, Anthony. From what you said this morning, if you look at the way in which the corporate culture is in Kenya, the change is normally left for, I would say, the higher administration offices, the HR. Do you think that is our biggest undoing when you're talking about the levels of implementation, and how aware would you say, I know you've spoken to a lot of businesses and corporates on this, how aware are they about change management?
Now, I like that question. It's a sad affair, and I have been in organizations, I've worked in organizations where change has happened. I have worked in organizations where I have been laid off. So the change that happened actually affected me. So I have been there, and I really think that is very pertinent. I think a lot of times, the HR is left with zero training and zero support and zero budget, and they are left to handle difficult transitions like layoffs. And a lot of companies mishandle those. And hence the big number, like we're saying, 70% of change initiatives are just bad. I was involved in something at the beginning of the year where the organizers were organizing, or they were inviting speakers to speak, and their catchphrase was bringing back the human in human resources, because the HR has been accused of not being human. And it is because of initiatives like this, where they are expected to carry out a strategy without enough resources, without enough support, without enough budget, and they end up mishandling it. And what that does is that it creates mistrust, it creates suspicion, it creates in fact, even the good culture that was there starts becoming shaky, because I don't know if I'm next, if I was left. And if it was mishandled for Simba, who's to say that it will not be mishandled for me or for so and so? So I agree with you that there should be a concerted effort within the organization, that the change begins from the top and is led, ideally, by the top leadership. HR should have their place, but they should not be tasked with leading painful and winding change, because we don't like change from the get-go, and we need to see that the whole organization is speaking in one voice. When we leave the HR to fry, and then we start we leave the employees to think that the HR is a bad person, we give a bad name to that whole industry, or the function of HR, which is really not the case.
Pretty much. Anthony, thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us this morning. You've been quite invaluable.
Thank you, Simba. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. Any questions that you have for him, you do know what to do. 20146. That is your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. We take a little break, but once we come back, the question is going to be, is it okay for us to talk about bringing poster back? And should these measures in terms of your money transactions be made permanent? Once we come back here on Metropole Television.